Judge, would you like to go ahead and discuss the interlocal agreement so you can be done?
That's fine.
Okay, we'll go ahead and go with that next. Basically, when we spoke with you in court, a couple of months ago, you asked us to come back and discuss doing what we want to do. We have talked amongst ourselves some. We would like to work out something with you. And welcome all of you. Welcome Brad, Emily, welcome commissioners. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. We really do. What did you have anything specific in mind as to how you would like to go forward with an interlocal agreement with us?
Well, I think if you look at the interlocal agreements that were prepared back when they first, the county and cities agreed to it, those interlocal agreements are pretty much within statute, and as far as I'm concerned,
okay,
are pretty good. The problem is that they were not non-specific. So I think any interlocal agreement that we do, we need to be specific on what the city and the county wants to work together on.
okay.
And I think it, I know we've discussed trying to find out what projects the city has that they want to go into an interlocal agreement with the county.
It's not necessarily projects that we're looking at. It's just occasionally we need help with hauling. Our old dump truck won't make it to Murray. We occasionally need help with hauling, like ball field dirt, rock, salt, that type of thing. We occasionally need a track hoe. We have backhoes, we have good backhoes. We occasionally need a track hoe to help clean out a ditch, to help clean out a creek. That type of thing is all we're not asking for anything big. We're asking just for smaller issues, such as everyday issues that we face, but it's not something that we would abuse. It's something that we would occasionally ask for some help for.
Right. And I think for the county, we don't know, we haven't had any projects presented to the county. We understand that we may have equipment that the city may not have. We're not opposed to supporting the city, but when you look at those agreements that were drafted, and if you get into specifics as far as, say, road maintenance, even the statute suggests that the labor and equipment costs be covered by those cities. And the cities back then actually agreed to that. And so I think that may have been some of the confusion as far as, is the city wanting to go into an agreement with the county and understand what those costs are. We break down our costs with our labor and equipment. There may be a private sector out there that may have the same piece of equipment that's actually cheaper.
Exactly.
So I think those things need to be identified. The county's not opposed to supporting the city, but I think we need to get into the details of what actually the city's requesting.
Okay. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. And if we built a road or we put in a bridge and we asked the county for assistance, there would be no question that we would expect to pay for that. No question. And I think they always have. I think the cities always have paid for a large project. But when it comes to using some equipment that we don't have and that we can't buy, and it's something that we rarely use, so it really wouldn't benefit us to put that much money into a piece of equipment like that. That's what we're asking for. Would you like to have a workshop where we can sit down and really discuss details? Do you want an interlocal agreement for that type thing? Would you like for me to request through email to you for that type thing?
Well, I think the question's still unanswered. We don't know what projects the city's asking of the county.
I don't either. I don't either. It pops up day to day. It's something that might, we may have a ditch that has caved in and we might ask for a track. Judge, could we have a track hoe today? Could we have a track hoe and an operator to fix this ditch and put some riprap back in it? We're asking for projects that are unknown, basically.
You mean like emergency situations? Because I think that's
Not,
a bit different.
Not necessarily emergency. It's like we've always worked with the county, if we had something that come up that we didn't have a piece of equipment to do it with, we would contact the county and ask for help. But they're not always necessarily an emergency. So how would you prefer to handle something like that? Would you prefer to work up an interlocal agreement? Us have a certain way that we need to contact you? Do you want us to contact you? You want us to contact Wendy?
Well, I think when we look at the Attorney General's opinion, the non-specific is what I think we need to nail down.
Well, Judge, and I don't mean to jump in here, but I think part of this is we're trying to figure out, the discussion we had last time, as part of this, what do we need an interlocal agreement that's signed and passed by both bodies, by the Fiscal Court and by the City Council, and sent off and approved by the state and sent back before we ask you all to clean out a ditch? I mean, are those types of things things that we need to formalize so that on my part I can be sure that we're complying with the procedures that you want, and we've done it according to the statutes that we discussed at the Fiscal Court and that interlocal agreement act? Or is there a process and procedure where we can submit smaller requests, day-to-day requests, things like that, without having to have a formalized agreement that's approved by the state and passed by the legislature and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Well, I think that may be where the confusion is. The interlocal agreements obviously are agreements that the city and the county goes into. We've got a history of interlocal agreements. You can go back and look at current interlocal agreements that we're in, and working together to facilitate, just like the building inspection. That's new to everybody. The cities and the county are in an interlocal agreement. It is an agreement that we all agree to and support one another. But I think we're cutting hairs here when we get into projects that we don't know. The county doesn't know what the needs of the city are. I know that that's something that we've been asking. What are the projects that the city is asking of?
I don't recall you ever asking me that, Judge.
Well, Judge, if I can refer you back to the resolution that we sent, it outlines a number of things that the city's identified that we've got on an ongoing basis.
Let me interject real quick, because I know the mayor said she hadn't been asked, but the correspondence was through the attorneys. I know Jeff had sent correspondence to your office requesting that. You said you had to get back to the mayor. So I mean, we don't know what projects the city has.
Judge, like I said, the resolution that we sent to you, and part of what we've been discussing and trying to discuss at the Fiscal Court, some of the things are, and again, we're talking about general things that the city and the county have cooperated on without interlocal agreements for a long time. Those include some type of street maintenance, road maintenance, utility works, maintenance of the parks, the police force. You know, there's a city police officer that sets out at South Marshall Middle School, which is outside the city limits, morning and afternoon every day of the year. And those types of things, I mean, we're still doing that. I don't mean to put Chief Watwood on the spot, but I assume we did that today. You know, those types of things that we've got a cooperative relationship on that are ongoing. What we're asking is for these types of things, just generally, that we can't predict or expect a certain ditch in a certain street in a certain place is going to be needed. You know, we're going to need the Traco to clean it out. On those types of things, is the county requesting that we formalize an interlocal agreement that's approved by the DLG before we submit those types of requests? And if not, how do we submit those types of requests, and what type of procedures would you prefer us to go through so that we know what resources would be available?
Okay, there's several things there. You've got street maintenance, which there's an actual statute, I think it's 178, that covers that outside the interlocal agreement. Anything in regards to law enforcement, that's not a fiscal court function. I know that the agencies have their agreements at their level. That's handled at the agency level. So if there's a city unit that's sitting out at the school, that request is either from that agency, not so much county government. Again, you know, and it's great that we're having these conversations, because there are some things that may have been done in the past. If officers are being sent out to do routine calls for traffic control, I can assure you the fiscal court did not request that. That There are mutual aid, Chief, I know that you guys have some type of a mutual aid agreement, like our ambulance services with adjacent counties that have an ambulance service. There's a mutual aid agreement where if they need assistance, if they can provide that assistance, they will provide that assistance. So I mean, the interlocal agreements, when you look at the street maintenance, I think the statute even says that those parties are to pay for the labor and the cost and the benefits that the city or the county would have to pay.
Mayor, can I say something?
Absolutely.
This is just my personal opinion, but being around a pretty good while in this county and city, what I'd like to see is the day come that we can return to the time when she can call you and ask for a favor of some kind and not have to go to the KRS or an interlocal agreement or all these legal things that we're all talking about, which are good, and we don't want to break the law. But what is the objection to doing that for us on a daily basis? Like if she needs a truck, do we have to go back to read the letter of the law to loan us a truck? I would rather us go back to the time when we locally cooperated with one another on a daily basis without the written things. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, Jeff.
Dan, and I've been around here a long time too, and I know what you're talking about, but at the point when there is a disagreement, if there's suddenly, if there's an attempt to enforce some prior deal back when, that's what makes it look like you're just attempting to get around the statute. You see what I'm saying?
Well, another thing that bothers me is we are all county taxpayers also.
I agree.
So
I'm not saying that.
When the county does a favor for our mayor or us, as city council members or citizens, we're really doing it for the taxpayers and themselves, us.
I think the best way to answer that, Bush, is if the county and city goes into agreement that's by the letter of the law, you're still accomplishing the same thing. And you have what Jeff's talking about. You've got that document. You've got that statute on your side. If you follow that,
but here's the problem.
that's the best protection that you have for your employees, your equipment, and the city and county governments
The
together.
problem I see with that is it'd be a massive document if you wanted to cover every tiny thing that could happen on a daily basis. How could we ever write something?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you're going day to day and one hand scratches the other, you know, but all that, just what you're talking about in years past, but at the point where one says, no, I'm not going to do that this time, and the other says, well, you have to because we got a cooperative agreement, that's where it becomes an issue. Because I'll be honest with you, in my 20 years, when requests came in over there, they weren't always honored. There were times when people were unhappy with each others and things like this happened. But, you know, that's the point I'm making. If you want, everybody wants to force the other party to do something, then you need to have it in writing. If you're going to play it day to day, then, you know, you take what you get when you get it.
Right, and I think that's where there was some miscommunication between maybe Jeff, me and you, or Judge, me and you, or something about that prior interlocal agreement. So, you shared all the information with me at the Fiscal Court about the Attorney General's opinion and all that. But what Butch is saying is tax dollars can be spent by either governmental entity for a public purpose, for the public benefit. There are some things that the county has done for years that the city doesn't have the ability to do, and vice versa. There's things that the city continues to do that maybe we're better at or have better resources to do. And it's been the experience, again, I'm maybe newer than anyone here on this stuff, but it's been the experience of the governments where on those types of issues, there can be just a cooperative atmosphere and not necessarily a contractual agreement that we bind each other to. And so what we're trying to figure out for our planning purposes and for our operation purposes is every time we request something from the county, do we need to submit a request for an interlocal agreement that's a binding contract that gets submitted to the Department of Local Government, or can there be some sort of process that we understand for less formal arrangements and less specific requests, who do we go to? How do we submit those requests? Who reviews those requests? And how do we find out whether or not we're going to be able to rely on the county to do those types of things and provide those services on our end of things? I mean, in every situation, does there need to be that contractual binding agreement that's been approved? Or is there another process that the county would prefer and that we can work through to figure out how to cooperate together without going through all the rigid formalities of that particular set of statutes?
And that's a very broad question, because here's my concern: the rigidness of those agreements. Let's say it's verbal. If we send a verbal commitment by me, and we send out county employees with county equipment to do something for a city agency, and something bad happens, then that employee's in a bad, we're basically putting that employee in a bad situation. For an example, you know, you look at, say there's a request by the city to do something because it's a specific piece of equipment. They go out, they tear something down. And then there's actually, later they find out that the item that was torn down has got some legal holdings in court. Now we've just interjected ourselves into a much greater or worse situation. Not knowing the details of what the projects are, I feel we're putting our people and equipment in situations that we do need to have better communication on what the requests are. And I don't think that that's foreign. I think that that's just good relationships when we work together. I don't have a problem filling out a stack of paperwork if it's the right thing to do. And the requests, if it's outside an emergency, then they should be no requests. You know, you're talking about policing as an example. It's in the resolution. And how long have they been out there providing that assistance? It's not something that just came up. I mean, it's just something that's known. So I think we need to nail down what actually the city wants from the county. I mean, to answer that question, we need to know what the requests are from the city.
So what it boils down to is each time that we have a request, do we want to do an interlocal agreement? How do you want to handle that?
Well, I think the county needs to be notified.
Okay.
When the
How
county,
would you like to be notified?
Yeah, because when the county's not notified, and I think too, in the past, things were done where the judge may not have been notified, or the fiscal court may not have been notified, which I think is even worse, because now you've got things that are going on with departments that the leadership is not involved in. Does that make any sense? I think that needs to be shored up. Everybody that is responsible, because at the end of the day, somebody is responsible. And if those individuals aren't involved, then I think we're creating some bigger problems for ourselves. I would obviously communicate with the mayor if there was any type of request from the county. And I think that would be mutual.
I'd be happy to do it if that's the way you want it, and we're not trying to get around
Sure.
any kind of interlocal agreement.
Sure.
We've never tried to do that. We've tried to work together, and I want to work together. I just need to know how you want me to do it.
Yeah.
And however you want me to do it, that's how I'll do it.
Well, Mayor, I hope you didn't take that as me saying, I think you were trying to get around it. I'm just saying when they're like, if you two disagree, and okay, let's just go back and use the facts. When there was some kind of misunderstanding or disagreement about the salt hole, and the next thing I know, we get a lawsuit to enforce this interlocal agreement, which turned out wasn't even in place. You know, if the city's going to turn around and threaten to sue us, we've got to take it seriously, and we got to know what we're facing.
Who threatened to sue you?
And the lawsuit, your attorney did. I believe the
I
letter
don't think so.
mentions a lawsuit to enforce it.
I don't have the letter in front of me, but that wasn't the intent. The intent has always been, from our first conversation, to figure out how we
Well, I
cooperate.
know, you and I sat down and we talked about that.
Right.
We would never sue the county.
Well, I would say that, but because we
Right.
need to.
And when you look at the interlocal agreements, and you go back and look at the past, as far as interlocal agreements, actually, if a party steps out of that agreement, in some cases, that's the only option you have, which is a bad option. I mean, that's not very good when county and city or government agencies have to, that's the only recourse to get something done. But I think for the county, you know, trying to understand what it is that the city has as far as projects. You know, I know when we discussed, when we had our conversation last year, the one thing that I mentioned was that the county needs to be in position to help on the big projects. Oak Level Water Project is one of those big projects. And that's one of the things that I was committed to. Obviously, the county does not have a water company. We don't have the control over that.
Right.
So we have to work with Benton Water, with the Oak Level project. We've got a water tank out there. We've got a pump house out there that the county has funded. But we can't get water to the water tank because there's problems with the pressure and the pipes. We've sent engineers out. We've identified 2 corridors where there may be some valve issues that need to be looked into. And I've been committed to that to help on that project. That's something that we can work together so that we can get that resolved, so we can get water out to that water tower. But day-to-day stuff, I don't know. I mean, y'all have to help us with what those day-to-day functions are.
I'll make an appointment with you, Judge.
Okay.
Same. We'll sit down and talk
Yeah.
about it. Definitely.
'Cause we-
As far as the water project out there, that's a great idea. Our customers are not having a lot of problems. Is that right, Tony?
As of right now. no.
But if you want to get enough pressure out there to fill that water tower, there are some issues out there. I believe there's some air relief valves out there that are buried that will have to be dug up and replaced. 10 or 12 of those actually at a pretty large cost. Everybody in the county deserves potable water. That would push more potable water out that way. The only problem with that is we would have to completely rework our water plant and the telemetry, I understand, and probably have to hire more people to take on that project. But I would definitely be willing to sit down and work with you on that if we can. So I will make an appointment with you. Would you all prefer to do it as a workshop altogether, or would you rather the judge and I sit down and talk? Commissioners, how do you all feel about that?
A workshop would be better, I think.
Okay. You all?
Yeah.
Are you agreeable to that, Judge, a workshop or
Yeah, I mean,
council
that's
commissioners?
whatever we need to do
Okay.
to work out these projects. I know the Oak Level project has been one that, well, I know people out at Oak Level that live by that water tower.
Yes,
wonder why there's no water.
sure they do, sure they do, and they deserve it, definitely. So we'll sit down with you and try to get some things worked out.
Okay.
Appreciate you being here.
Yes.
I'm glad to get this together, get everybody together like this. I think we got a lot worth got. See what they say.
One thing, Judge, I'd like to ask, we didn't have any snow this year, thank goodness. But in the past, when we've had snow, the city and the county has worked together because to get to some of the county streets, you have to come through the city. Okay, subdivision going out by the parkway out here, Dr. Gordon subdivision. Anyway, the rule was, from the county, was it doesn't cost the county any money to drop that blade when you come through town. It doesn't cost us any money to clear off county, well, let's just say the courthouse, the library, the judicial building, all that stuff, okay? So we run our equipment to clean off. And I know the subdivision where Mr. Wynn lives over here, you have to go through a city subdivision to get to those two houses at the end, which is county. So the county always dropped that blade when they started in that subdivision, went back to those two houses and come back out. So I guess what we need to know, do you plan on honoring how that's been done in the past? As far as cleaning snow? So you're gonna lift your blade up when you come in off of 408 and not have a blade down anymore? That's one thing concerned the citizens, you know, is are we gonna get our city and our county cleaned up as efficiently as we can and not somebody be standing out there and say, well, I don't think this is our street, so we're not gonna drop the blade. We need to, as efficiently as we can when there's a snowstorm, is get the city and the county clean.
Well,
I've had people asking me that.
Yeah, I would use the analogy of paving. We don't stop the paving of the same road that you're talking about, it's paved, correct?
Right, and then on the other side of town over there, and there's some others here that the only way to get to them, you're landlocked. It's the only way the county can get to these streets, is they've got to come through the city. And of course, nobody's ever charged anybody for the maintenance of that. And that's just like the police going out here in the county, doing that for those kids. We used to do it right here in town. Of course, it was in the city. Now it's out in the county. And we've never charged the county a dime for our police officers to go out there and do that.
Yeah, I think
You know?
what we were talking about earlier is that the county's not sending the city police department out there for this.
No, you're not. But, and I might have been told wrong, was that your department didn't have time to do it. So out of the kindness of his heart and the city council, we allow them to go outside of our city limits and patrol, because those kids, it needs control out there. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's an agency issue that they need to work out at the agency level, because it happens.
Every day, twice a day. You know, so I mean, the city is willing to go beyond their limits to help things. We just ask for y'all to go beyond the limits to help us out to where it's not a big mess. We don't want to mess with the county. The city and county's always gotten along, and we want to continue everybody getting along and not nitpicking every little thing. That's not my job, or that's your job. It shouldn't be that way.
I don't think that's happening. I think that's what we're here tonight.
That's what I said, we need to get all this straightened out.
What project?
And what projects that, as far as I know, the city and county always work together, have always worked together. And we want to continue working with the magistrates and you and whoever you send to deal with the situation. And I get a lot of phone calls when tax bills came out and all this stuff. I know other people got, even if I'm at Walmart, people come in and say, well, what are we getting for, we live here in the city, what are we getting for our county money? When they start billing the city for a little bit of salt, then why, where's our money? What is the county's responsibility for this city for that approximately $3.2 million that comes from the residents of this city? I mean, somewhere there's got to be something done for our money.
I don't think I understand what you're saying about salt. What are you talking about salt?
Well, when you wanted to charge the city for that $800, whatever it was, of salt, she got it contracted for $500, which was cheaper, which was better for us. But
I think that's the achievement. We're actually looking at that. Just because we have a dump truck doesn't mean it's the cheapest solution. We're actually looking in our bids to see if they'll deliver. I mean, if it's going to save the taxpayers money, then we want to look at that.
There are some cases that it's
and
cheaper.
yeah, and that's what we got to look at. I just don't like the attitude of flat no if it's not in the county, if it's something in the city.
Who said no?
I'm just saying, I don't want the city to come to that, is what I'm saying. It's not, and like I say, we wanna help the county as much as, because we gotta cross that county to go anywhere, you know, it's not just in the city.
Sure.
But I know there's a lot of citizens concerned in this city that there's a big question, where does our money go? The city residents, because I guarantee you, I'll tell you, I pay the cheapest rates in the whole country for the city tax rates. I pay $150-something for that. I pay you $800 and something. So what do I get from my $800? And the city's providing a whole lot more for $154 than what the county's. So I wish you, when you're making that budget, look where you're gonna put that money.
Maybe that's some things we can work out.
That's what I said, these
sit
some
down in our
things for
workshop
citizens,
and-
I'm not saying me personally
and look
saying
at it.
this. It's concerns of the citizens out here in this city. So, that's all I got to say.
Anybody else have anything? Chris, you got anything? Commissioners? Anything to say? No? Okay. Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We really do.